Farm financing. This has gotten to be a lot bigger issue since all the inputs have gone up a lot more. Fertilizer is about 5 times more expensive than it was half a dozen years ago. Seed costs a lot more money. Ag chem, well, that's roughly flat, but farmers are using more ag chem products, so even though the pricing is about flat, ag chem usage is up overall. So you got all these things going out there. Equipment costs more, land costs more, everything costs more. As a farmer, you've got to have a lot of financing lined up.
Well, here's the thing, Brian, though. If you're a young farmer and you're just getting started, it's really tough right now because everything is so expensive. You have to handle so much money to be able to put a crop in. But if you're a farmer that's been established and you've got 30 or 40 years under your belt, you own a little bit of land, your equipment's paid for, my goodness, you've got some capital right now on your balance sheet.
Yeah, and you have some options. And this is the main thing that we always try to stress to young farmers. Really, really, really work hard on your balance sheet. Because if you've got a good balance sheet, then usually you're able to borrow more money and you're able to borrow it at a lower interest rate. And you start looking at interest rates, and if you can borrow for 1 to 2% less over 30 years, boy, that really adds up in terms of total dollars.
Well, and you know, we always talk about all the seminars that you could go to over the winter and how you should go to some agronomy seminars and step up your production. Maybe you need to go to an accounting seminar if this isn't your strength and learn a little bit more about some of those things you can do to make some more money on paper, or at least make things look better, and find out really where your dollars are going. Because a lot of us, you know, get to the end of the year and say, well, you know, I made some money, so it was a good year. Yes. But if you can control your expenses just a little bit better and you can manage your money a little more effectively, you can make even more money and get ahead faster.
Okay, so if you're going to borrow money, you have some options out there that you didn't used to have. Now there are a whole bunch of third-party lenders who are willing to loan you money, and even retailers who are willing to loan you money.
Well, Brian, everybody says, you know, we're an ag banker. We're your friend on the farm. All of a sudden, you know, it's amazing over the last few years, everybody wants to be our friend on the farm.
Well, yeah, it's changed a little bit here in just the last few years since farmers have started making some decent money. But you know, we had about a 30-year stretch there that was pretty tough, and so a lot of farmers were turning to these other third-party options. And I guess I just wanted to explain real quick, if you're not familiar with this, what will happen at a lot of ag retailers is you say, well, I want to pick some product up. They aren't the ones who actually make the charge. Yes, they might write it up right there, but they then sell your loan off to somebody else, or immediately they work on having you sign the papers with someone else, so it's really a third-party lender. But the problem is a lot of times those third-party lenders charge a fee to that retailer. It might be 2%, it might be 4%. All I know is it's significant in terms of total dollars. And the reason why I bring all that up is I kind of come back to the whole local bank thing. If you can work with your local bank, a lot of times that's going to be your lowest cost source of funding.
All right, well, what about this problem? Because we've talked to a lot of farmers around the first of the year that said, man, I want to take advantage of the prepaid buying opportunities, but I think there's going to be a great opportunity for me to sell my crop in the spring and summer months when everybody else is out. So how do I get someone to finance me really 2 years crop, because I want to hold on to mine and sell later?
This is just a discussion that you have to have with your banker. Your banker has to understand what's going on. And yeah, maybe you need a credit line for 2 years rather than just 1 year, but you've got to have that banker understanding what's going on with this whole situation and really having a comfort level with you. So all we're trying to say today is we just want you to run these numbers. And I know if you're a 65-year-old farmer, you say, well, that's elementary. I've been working on that for years. I realize that. But a lot of the young farmers haven't. And a lot of them have their dads or their grandpas take care of a lot of these things. And that's who we're specifically speaking to today. We want you to get comfortable with talking to the banker. And in order to do that, you've got to speak in his terms. In other words, you've got to start talking about things in your farm in terms of net return on investment and net APR return on investment, and learn about some of these banking terms. It doesn't take very long, but if you do all those things and you start talking in those terms, you're going to have a lot better success with the banker, most likely.
And we talk a lot about farm transition on our show too, from one generation to the next. And turning over control of the books is one of the hardest things for a lot of guys to do. Yeah, but you have to get that young generation trained, and you have to have them in on these conversations so they can take over when needed.
Yeah, but it's not just that. One of the biggest things when the transition takes place is how much capital does that young farmer have? And now where you were able to borrow for a prime interest rate, now the bank wants to loan him prime plus 2%. Well, you start adding that up over, a period of years, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially in extra interest cost. So you've got to look at all these things. And I know it's not easy. We're just throwing out a lot of things to you today, but especially if you're a young farmer, we want you thinking about this, because this is another way that you can make more money on the farm if you can borrow for less. And we want you always thinking about, what if I pay cash? What's my net cost on things? And try to do that as much as you possibly can.
And one of the things you may need to spend a little cash on is controlling our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?